Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about Pluto and Scorpio. This is an archetype I know a lot about. It's something that I've been pretty much obsessed with for the last few years, and I will show you exactly why. I really want to bring to your attention, if you don't already know, the nature of Pluto in defining our generations. If you look at the different periods of time in which Pluto is in each sign, you can see it defines what we would classify as a different generation. When Pluto was in the sign of Virgo, it was between 1956 and 71, 15 years in that sign. These were people who brought in new systems, who brought in the Librans in Pluto came along, and they wanted to transform and deconstruct relationships, everything that was related to relationship and love and what we would expect from a partner and what we would expect from the gender that we were supposedly defined as and what gender meant. Pluto in Scorpio. This is a generation from 1984 to 1995. If you're born between these years, you're dealing with scorpionic issues as the undercurrent of your life. And Pluto is at home in Scorpio. And yet it only spent 11 years there. It's the shortest amount of time it spends in any sign because it doesn't have a perfect orbit. And with good reason. Because what does this period of time bring? This is a period of time where we have to confront all issues to do with sexuality. This is when the AIDS crisis happens. This is a period of time deep nihilism and disillusion. This is a really in the depth of the depths of the depths of the psyche. This is no longer clinging to an ideal or even feeling part of a collective. This is a group of people who can identify with being thoroughly individualistic and quite disassociated from the temporal world. Quite disturbing for others. And inevitably, every one of these generations compounds what has come before and has very little respect for what the last sign has been through. So all of the work of the Virgos, the Pluto in Virgo generation, was kind of dismissed, and holes were poked in the perfect fabric of this period of time by the Scorpions. The breakdown of the Libra relationship, the free-flowing sexuality, the single-parent families, the Scorpio generation had to come along and put a cap on that. Literally, sexual abandon was no longer a free-flowing thing. It had to have some kind of regulation. The quality of Pluto is so deep and so dark, and it's so far out into deep space that it's quite difficult to comprehend. In 1995, Pluto moved into Sagittarius, and as always, Sagittarius can lighten things. But this period of time was still fire. This is still plutonic. So any kind of big Jupiterian themes of Sagittarius expanding were given the plutonic element of deep transmutation. And this is when 9/11 happens, and it's climaxed. The end of this Bakusian delights, this fantasy bubble had to be burst, and in 2008 that is when the financial crisis happened globally. Then comes along Pluto in Capricorn. This is where we are now, and this goes on until 2024. This is the longest period that we've seen of Pluto in one sign, and Capricorn is structure. It's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is this year conjunct with Pluto and Jupiter. This is an unavoidable element for us. And Pluto was only recently discovered and then classified as not being a planet, and then reclassified because it's so difficult to quantify, to comprehend, and yet it has this profound effect of deep space infiltrating all of our pretty little lives. And the children specifically born during these periods of time pick up on these things. So you may look at the Pluto in Scorpio generation. You might look at the things that were being produced at that time. If you think about Kurt Cobain, you think about that guttural singing of pain, just, and total. It's a hedonism without enjoyment. If that makes sense. It's a complete abandon of the senses and of self-care, and falling off of the edge. And it's something that collectively we went through. But being born in that, being in our infancy, in the first 7 years of our life during this period of time, means we will have this as an integral part of our psyche. Even if on the surface we have a Sagittarius or a Taurus sun, and things seem optimistic and a bit bright, there is this edginess to the Scorpio generation. And each of these generations, if you look at it that way, we always say that we don't understand each other between the generations, and you can see why, when it's something so, it's our profound core, it's not so much trauma as the baseline. It's the baseline that we're all working from. So we have all the other archetypes dancing and dotted across the surface, but the core of people born during each of these periods of time is always our Pluto placement. This is how I feel and how I see it. I have a particularly prominent Pluto sense, especially at this moment in time, and I will show you why. This is a time of blending and blurring and merging and breaking down and reconstructing, and it's very unsettling. For Pluto, it's not. Pluto doesn't necessarily have an individual sense of self. Pluto is the elephant in the room. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to look at that. And yet it is controlling us from beneath our feet. A big reason why this scorpionic plutonic energy is being dragged forward as well this month is because Mercury goes into Scorpio. Now I talk about this because I have this placement. I have a conjunction of Scorpio, of Mercury and Pluto in Scorpio. And we have that from the 10th of November to December the 1st of this year. This is Mercury, the planet closest to the sun. This is choppy, fast, changing, retrograde, not retrograde, back, forth, up, down. It's Hermes with wings on his heels, flitting here and there. And Mercury is home in Gemini and Virgo, and little things and small things and chitter chatter and getting everything in order and details. And Pluto is deep, penetrating. It's so deeply feeling that it is almost insensitive. It will appear insensitive to those more on a level that can be hurt by words and things. It doesn't use words. It uses I mean, I can't even say lasers, but it's something that we can't even comprehend. And I've said here that it's this light, breezy, nimble quickness, and it meets the deepest, darkest of space and our subconscious. I don't believe in a subconscious. I believe in a rejected consciousness. The more we open up, the more we see our own consciousness, and we realize it's not so secret. It's our desires, it's our trauma, it's our sexuality, and it's related to the mind. So you imagine our deepest, darkest sexual repressed desires, and not just sexual but sensual and sacral, you know, what you want to do with your life, but suppressed, and the trauma and the things we don't want to look at, and the dirty things. And then Mercury is flitting about on top of this point almost frantically, like we're gonna go deep on this, and I'm willing to use this. So it's taking this totally cerebral, mental, ingenious, mercurial mind, and then drawing all of the archetypes in on itself with Pluto. And it's this incredible combination, and I see it as this union of duality, the best of both worlds. It's not, I am a deeply feminine, emotional, deep space, way far out Scorpion, and I'm this fast-paced, flitting, masculine Gemini with action. It's the two of the most opposite archetypes coming together, and it's transcending the superficial, and it's transcending the personal emotions of Cancer, and finding this exquisite balance where a mind can really be useful. And communication, we can finally communicate something so unquantifiable. Mercury is willing to go there in this moment. Now, these are my paintings of the different archetypes, and I will narrow it down, but this is to show why we do not necessarily all understand each other all of the time, and why each human within themselves does not have a particular understanding, coherence within themselves. If you look, I have my moon in Aries. It's there, it's fire, cardinal. It's this first sign here, so it's fire moving forward. And yet I have my Mars in Cancer, so I've got this action that's water moving backwards and forwards, and then I've got these emotions, which is fire, which is instantaneous. And then it's all kind of all over the place, because there's all of this mutable energy of Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius moving through my chart. So these are conflicting energies. I want to illustrate this point because the paintings are created as a means to show cardinal fire moving forward, fixed earth moving inward, mutable air moving outwards. And this goes through all of the different signs and shows what that looks like. Some are much more feasible than others. Fixed earth, okay, fixed, grounded, steady, stable, Taurus, beautiful. And mutable air moving outwards. Of course, you can't contain it. That would be bubbles. And then the plug hole of Scorpio as it swirls inwards. Fixed water, you can't fix it. It's always moving. It stagnates if you try to fix water. I want to emphasize the nature of the fixed energy. Fixed fire of Leo moving in on itself. Fixed air of Aquarius, which forms gas bubbles in a sense. But what we're working through in this period of time, the sun is in Scorpio, and Pluto is the Scorpio theme, which is sitting in Capricorn with Saturn and Jupiter doing its thing. And it's, if there is an overpowering flavor in anything, it's going to be Pluto. Jupiter is sitting there and expanding. It doesn't mean that it's bringing in Sagittarius notions of optimism and expansion. No, it brings in and expands what is there. What is there is Saturn, control, bones, structure, rigidity, where our boundaries are. And that's sitting with Pluto, which has no boundaries, wants to break it all down. It doesn't have a want. It's whatever your deepest desires are, it will enact them out. Jupiter sits on top of all that and expands it. This is fixed water. Scorpio is fixed feminine water. It's Pluto and it's moving inwards. When you see the lakes and the lochs of Scotland and Ireland and the Lake District in England, the water there is not full of life. It is stagnant, it is black, and the concentration of carbon is too high for life to survive. The water is dark. When you swim in it, you can't see more than a few feet in front of you, and it's essentially dirty. One argument why the Loch Ness monster could not possibly live in this long and narrow stretch of Loch Ness. So then that leaves us open to the other realms, because it doesn't mean anything can exist there that we can see. It's too dark, it's too dense, it's too fluid, it's too messy. We can't penetrate it. And Pluto cannot essentially be penetrated, and yet Mercury is there wanting to go deep and wanting to use that concentration of the mind in a plutonic, deeply penetrating way. It's a very interesting time to play with this energy, and I feel really privileged to share this with you, because this is how I experience the world. This is my reality, and here we are. This is my chart, and this was the chart for the 11th. I have the transits and I have my birth here for the 11th of November 2020. You know, probably a very auspicious numerological date. And as you can see down here, and I'm using myself as an example to show you just how you can read your own chart. Down here is the sun. The green on the outside are the current planets. The black on the inside is me at my birth, and these lines in the middle, this is me at my birth. So at the moment the sun is here, and it's just about to move on top of my conjunction of Pluto and Mercury in Scorpio. So it's going to expand all of this energy, which is why, I mean, it happens exactly on Friday, tomorrow. So it's my my most I mean, it affects me all year round, but it's the most coherent moment for it now. Soon at Mercury, well, actually just now Mercury has moved back into Pluto, back into Scorpio, sorry. At the same moment, Pluto itself has been sitting on top of my Venus. Venus being values, Venus being very much at home in Taurus and Libra, and yet it's Pluto. So it's a flavor that is penetrating everything that we touch, and it has been fairly unavoidable, very uncomfortable for myself and for anyone around me throughout this time. And as of all a year, but especially next week, we have Jupiter coming along to expand all of this with Saturn. in Capricorn. All of this taking place in Capricorn. At the same time, over here in Taurus, we have Uranus. Uranus being about trauma, being the first planet to be discovered after Saturn. Saturn was the furthest thing we could see with the naked eye. Saturn was something we could quantify. You can see it, you can identify it. And then Uranus is discovered in 1781. And it breaks down all reality of what we thought was the universe. It's a second Copernican revolution, and it's forcing us to go deeper. Every new planet we discover, and there will be more, and there will be more asteroids and more. I mean, there are many things that we've discovered now, many identical mirror planets to the Earth that we've discovered that we don't even know how to engage with yet. So these 12 archetypes we work with now, they're just the ones that we have in front of us at the moment, and there are other realms of consciousness that we will step into. When I was born, there was only the vaguest concept of what the internet would be, and now it is something so unifying. Coronavirus is so unifying. It's insane how it's managed to make the world this small at the same time as making the universe so much bigger. And Uranus has been forcing us to identify what we value while it's sitting in Taurus. And reassess, and reassess, and reassess. What is the material? What is the matter? What is the matter? What's the matter? And I have here this really funny little image. It's not easy being the psychedelic sheep of the family. And breaking down in the different stages of evolution, firstly, how we appear to our peers and then our family and our colleagues and the outside world. How do we appear? And then we start realizing we don't fit in those boxes. We start dismantling them, and then we come out as a black sheep, because anybody who knows when they start doing this work, that is then triggering for those around them, because it triggers a sensation of grief when you don't behave in the way that you have been, other people have been accustomed to you behaving. There is comfort in familiarity, and I know personally when I started acting outside of my patterned ways, however bad they may have been, even if I started acting in a more harmonious way, that was incredibly unsettling for those around me. Hence the identified patient black sheep archetype emerged. And of all the planets and of all of the signs, I think everyone can agree that Scorpio has got a bad rep, and Pluto is at home in Scorpio. And with everything that happens in a chart, if you look at my personal transits, the thing that is always going to be highlighted and re-highlighted and smacking me in the face again and again is what is Pluto doing? And it's sitting on my Venus. Venus being relationships and values and love. How do I love? How do I show love? And little things come to attention. How do I love my environment? How do I just reach out and make that little bit of extra effort to put a blanket across my partner? And what is stopping me? This morning, as I was for some reason, I mean, there's a lot of strange paradoxes that start coming in when you're playing with this energy that mean it breaks down any kind of Virgo ascendant structure that I have here that wants to follow a plan. No, I start doing some interesting soul singing while I'm doing my exercises, and I say, yeah, sort of a freestyle ode to the fact that I don't want to love. I don't want to merge. I want my individuality, and I desperately do not want to have union. And it's a quality that you can see coming through in this chart. And Pluto is poking, relentlessly poking without intention, because it is just an energy that is always there. And my little pretty Venus is not so pretty. It's being shown to me the ways that I do not love, the ways I shy away from truer beauty. After a period of time shaking off the ego perfection that I'd cultivated, and then went into an ego that was more of just a total self-loathing. And now there's Pluto is saying, no, you're not this supreme diva, and no, you're not completely unlovable and disgusting. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to really, really be the breath and be the I am, and not label it. How many times in a day can you not label it? How many times in a day can you not identify with your errors and with your successes? How many times do you take credit for something God-given, and how many times do you try and pin your mistakes on God? All of this is taking place in Capricorn. Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, three of the hugest energies happening ever in the sky, conjunct for the first time in millennia in Capricorn. And there will not be a rest. There is no rest with Capricorn. It's the goat clinging to the top of the mountain. You may have seen these amazing creatures that can just hold on with the tiniest section of a hoof. And it isn't about whether they're enjoying themselves or not. It's not about assessing or judging anything as being survival or not. It's just being in that state of survival and not accumulating, because you can't accumulate, because I cannot climb this mountain with any more kilos. You know, if my best friend dies, I have to leave the body behind. And it's not a matter of sentiment, it's not a lack of love, it's a matter of practicality. And it's not a cutthroat survival, it's an assessment of the situation. What can I take with me? Where do I make sacrifices on the way? And it's also a simultaneously, Pluto is constantly there saying, there's nowhere to get to, you're there. And it's infuriating for the Capricorn that wants to have the tenacity and go and go and go. The dance between the Capricorn and the Scorpio is this tug of war with this rudimentary earthbound thing, the boss, the power, the president, and then the Scorpio of the inevitability of death, and laughing at the name of a black sheep and saying, but you don't seem to realize you're Pluto too. Everyone who judges themselves or others for being Scorpio, and it really is a pretty, you know, they have a very bad rap for being manipulative and secretive, all of these qualities, because they are qualities to do with deep dark space of something you can't grapple with, being confined into a shallow little ego. But what we don't realize is that within all of us we have this plutonic capacity, and that is the thing that's playing out and making us act out our deepest desires in ways which are not necessarily the kindest for ourselves or for others. And this is the other way this was the start of my Pluto journey, when it really, I knew it had to get serious, and I knew I had to be open to it. And it's one of those things where you dip your toe and you say, do you know what? I'm going to take the plunge. And this is the moment of, I was living in a cave, and it was a collapsed, there was a lava flow from a volcano, maybe 40 years ago, so fairly recently, and it had solidified, and then bits of it had collapsed in, and then they'd created a cave underneath. So it's not a safe place. And I went there and I was fasting, and this is a moment when I really thought, Mercury mind, I really thought, yeah, I'll be able to do this dark night of the soul, and it will last me, it will be a dark night. A dark night that might last 1 year. So I'm willing to do some fasting. I'm willing to release some addictions. I'm willing to cut off all social media, all engagement with the external world, and I will come up shining again, and you just wait and see. How naive. How naive. And this is the trick. This is the trick that Hermes will play with the underworld. The lord of the underworld, he will say, I will do your bidding, and I will do this dance, and we will go down this rabbit hole, but only this far. And Pluto says, yep, yeah, sure. Whatever you say, darling. And then it can just, it's quicksand. It just takes you in and in and in and in and in and in and in, and there is very little opportunity to come up for air. And it's that being okay with overwhelm that is where the secret lies. And however much we say this is too much for me, it's not true. We're capable of so much more than we realize, and we lose friends, we lose family, we lose faith, we lose hope, we lose weight, we lose and lose and lose, and as we are losing, we realize how much we're gaining. And these scaly skins get left behind. I'm fairly sure that scorpions must do the same as spiders. They're both arachnids, and the scorpion, it must shed its exoskeleton. And many times I see the transmutation of Scorpio being represented as a butterfly, and you have your caterpillar stage where you're innocent, munching away, and it's all good, and you're allowed to do whatever you want. You have the freedom of youth and ignorance. Then you go into a cocoon and you're in a soupy mess. And in the beginning, you're feeling quite adept. You've built your own cocoon. You've built your own place to shelter yourself. You feel quite, yeah, I can do this. I can manage this. I can micromanage this transformation, transmutation, this ascension path. And I will follow a 12 steps process to get there. And it just doesn't equate to that, because you do turn into a soupy mess and you lose control of your bowels. And Scorpio rules the bowels, Pluto rules the bowels and the intestines. And here is the best way I can illustrate the consciousness arising in the somatic sense within the body, of realizing what's happening in the guts and how important this is. And I've just noticed that we have a little Loch Ness monster up in this corner. That's very interesting here. So if I can talk you through it, starting here in my small world, my small house in the bottom here, this is the River Thames running through London, and discovering what food I was eating, the milkman coming at 2 o'clock in the morning, and my fence of my back garden, and what that restriction means, and what it meant to me, and what my world was, my school, grandparents' house, my house. Then Canary Wharf, expanding the view, expanding my perception to these other realms. And how did I see these things when I was a child? And then as this grows, I'm going up the road with the London buses, with the Millennium Dome, with 9/11 happening, with all these extra perceptions. And then that sense of, I know it, I've got it, I know what the world is, and that kind of break in consciousness when nothing seems to be happening. And there is, I heard in a film last night that God is just a kid with an ant farm. We're just an effing science experiment to that was the perspective that I had, certainly, that if there was a God, he was just using us for his to have a jolly. And then that total disillusionment and breakdown of hope that comes with Pluto. And I've got this like funny road island here which actually looks like a sperm. And then moving through London and all the different places, and then coming to this space of openness and changing of a diet and changing of a location, moving to Portugal, and what that means, and gathering with friends. This is a rainbow gathering of people around the fire, and the waterfall, and the movement of nature, and all of these things which Scorpio in itself seems to shy away from. And if you've ever seen anything about who's the lead singer of Led Zeppelin, of Frank Zappa, incredibly scorpionic and always at his desk, always in his computer, or whatever he was doing at the time. It wouldn't be computers, it would be in music software, and just kind of analyzing, going in. Very often there is a disconnection from nature that can happen with this, especially when the mercurial side comes in. So it was very healing to do the opposite of that and move through nature. And all the while, this is me traveling through my intestines and getting this much more somatic understanding of the body, you know, the hidden world. This is why Scorpio rules the intestines. It's this absolute web of mystery for us to discover. As much as we can discover about, I mean, that there is so much undiscovered in deep space and the deep ocean, and in the deep depths of the human body and the human psyche. We just haven't scratched the surface yet. We don't know anything. And then moving through the process and coming up here to the stomach, where I was at that moment digesting some pomegranates and just feeling like, got it now. And there's so many times on this path of just wanting to capitalize on what has been discovered and wanting to tell others about it and shine and have that brilliance. And the Pluto, it doesn't deliberately stop you from doing that. It just doesn't work. And it just isn't possible in that way. And all the while I'm trying to hold on to this golden heart down here. But there is the mind happening here, and there's the left brain and the right brain. So this is the two minds, the fragmented right brain with concepts. And I've got here the man-made constructed concept of boats coming into more and settling down in the neural pathways, synapses being solidified, firing and wiring, and then you've got the left brain here, the much more flow and fluid side of things that can't be quantified, and that's where Nessie comes in here to throw a spanner in the works. And what's the result of that? Well, you have volcanic explosion, because nothing is able to be rigidly identified. And here's I said Scorpio's plutonic transmutation in action. So this is a discovery of the bright self after the ego self, after one of the sadder versions of the ego had been dismantled. Then the spiritual ego came in of, I am here to live in my heart, which is a deeper truth, and it's the deeper, profounder reality that we all have within us, this seed of love and this potential for just transmuting it all. And feeling in that moment that there were many new age concepts about me being able to think my way out of something, positive thinking, which served its purpose in a way. But this is the caterpillar, essentially. And then the mutation of going inside the cocoon here, and it got really ugly. And I mean, who knows if I'm just, if the transmutation is only just about here, because there's a long way to go to get here, so it would seem. But this is what Pluto's always saying. It's saying, you are this, you are this, you are this, you are this. And the ego separate sense of self, the Mercury mind, says, but I want it to look like this and be like this. And I want to skip over a lot of this messy stuff. I want to imagine that I've finished. This, I made this inspired after doing Vipassana, where he talks about the mass of bubbles. I'm just a mass of bubbles. I'm a mass of bubbles. And this form is made of bacteria, again, Scorpio, insects, flies, worms, bacteria, viruses, and little microorganisms. That's all we are. We're bubbles. We're little bubbles of moving energy. And it's a fragmented thing. So hard to confine this. But the underlying essence is the seat of consciousness here. The seat of consciousness here in the heart. And living with the knowledge that this is the truest reality, and that each of these stages has its element of truth, but there's no way you can ever really identify with any of them. They are all just constructs. And the truest state of being, when you are this one with the stars, you won't be able to relay that information, because you're so much, the state that most of human consciousness now is so embroiled in the drama and so attached to the story that we even want to try to tell the story of being the stars. Whereas if you are the stars, there is no need. There's no need to share unless you are still working through this. So that expression, you teach best what you most need to learn. Well, this is me. I'm using myself as an example here of going through these stages of consciousness, and the way that it is not linear, the same way those intestines are moving back and forth and churning, and like there is no beginning, middle, and end. There's daily relapses, and there's daily shots of future potential that I'm revealed. The thing to know about Pluto is it's a difficult thing to say. It expects a lot. No, Pluto in Capricorn expects a lot. If you are coming at that perspective, coming at that conjunction, and you have Pluto in Scorpio, then it's going to make you step up and into this archetype. So many times we are not scared of our darkness. We are really scared of our light. And for a Scorpionic Pluto, our greatest light is our ability to really, really handle the darkness and it not affect us in any way. And many times we like to play small. We like to be an expert in our pain and suffering instead of these embodied, living, breathing examples of true humility. Humility being the ability to face and experience and own up to every emotion that is presented. It's not a case of being a perfect divine embodied walking Godhead on the earth. That's not what it's about. No, we're human. It's to be so effortlessly human that anything that is presented to us, we just let it go. We just let it wash through us without fighting, without turning away from it, just letting it all flow. Okay, so I want to bring it back now to the start and wrap it up by saying it is about shadow play, playing in the shadow. And once I was walking on a mountain, I had a bag that was bigger than me. I was clinically underweight and yet carrying a bag that weighed more than half of my own body weight, and just looking at my own shadow and just seeing the baggage for what it was, seeing all that I was carrying, warts and all. I hope this triggers something to arise within you, to start facing some of these things and realizing your own genius, and just your own capacity, our own ability to contain so much more deep space. The moment that you close your eyes, you're out of this mortal frame. You're not in this restrictive vessel anymore. So I invite you to take that journey and watch what Jupiter expands when it's sitting on top of this Pluto and Saturn. And let it happen. There is no controlling it. And it's not what the planets are doing to us, it's what we do with the planets. How do you want to dance? There's just no avoiding where our attention is being taken. And with my example of the Venus point here, there is just no avoiding it. It is always calling me home to love. So I hope you found some value in this, and I hope you can enjoy this time and really plunge in the depths of Scorpio and enjoy. Yeah. It's the prodigal son returning home from the deepest, darkest space. No, that's much more Uranus. And Pluto, there are no words. That's the thing. There are just no words. But there's a little attempt to bridge the gap. So if you found this content useful, engaging, inspiring, triggering, confronting any of these things, then please subscribe for more and like it, share it with your friends, write comments. I want to hear about your own placements, and if you want a reading with me, you can book one. My website is ineffableelse, .tumblr.com. I also have ineffableelse on Instagram and Twitter, and email ineffableelse@gmail.com. So take care, lots of love.